I'm going to be installing a mirror that has a front and rear facing dash camera, and I'm going to show you everything step by step on how I install it and also how I hardwire it for a clean look. These are the things that you'll need. A wire stripper. This is a tap fuse. This will go into the ignition fuse for power. And this is a ground terminal which will connect to the car metal chassis. A cigarette lighter outlet. This will basically connect to the dash cam. A voltage meter. You don't really need to use this if you don't have this, but it's just nice to have. A micro SD card for the dash cam. I'm using a 64 gigabyte. And I have a whole box of car fuses which I will need to use on the tap fuse. More on this as I get to this step later. And now this is the dash cam that I bought. I am not sponsored by them, but I did a lot of research and this has a lot of good reviews. Alright, so let's see what kind of contents are inside the dash cam. Here we have the mirror dash cam. The quality looks pretty nice here. On the top, we have the slot for the micro SD card, the input for the rear camera, and lastly, the input for the power connection. On the bottom is the power on and off switch, and it also puts the screen on sleep, and also has the speakers and microphone. And on the other side, we have the front-facing camera, which you can swivel any direction. You can even pull it out sideways to get a better view. Now these are the mounting bracket. This dash cam mirror setup goes over your existing mirror, so it's a very easy install. Alright, let's see what else we got in here. Alright, so we have this very long cable. This connects to the rear camera. It's got more than plenty enough length to go to the back of the car. And this red wire connects to the reverse light. Alright, here we have the power cable. This basically plugs into the cigarette outlet. So this is the cigarette outlet that I bought for the hardwire install. Instead of connecting it to the center of your console, this will be hidden away. And it comes with the plastic pry tool. Now these are rubber mounts for the mirrors. So this is how you connect it to the bracket. And then that just slips over your existing mirror. Has a cloth. And they give you a few of those rubber mounts, and these are screws for the rear camera. I will be tapping the car fuse for power, and for this car, the fuses are down by the driver's side panel. You may have to find out where your car fuses are. A quick Googling should find you the answer. So now I remove the cover, and the cover will usually have a diagram on what the fuses are. Basically, I'm trying to find a fuse which will have power when the car's ignition is on. So the fuse that I will be tapping into is the ignition fuse, which is the 10 amp. I want to make sure that this is the fuse to tap into. So I'm using a voltage meter. And I'm going to touch the metal on the 10 amp fuse on one end. And then the other end is touched on the car's chassis. Now the reading shows 0 when the car is off. And I wanted to see if it hits 12 volts when I turn the car on. Now that I know which fuse to tap into, this red fuse labeled 10 is what I'll be pulling out. I'm using a needle nose plier to pull it out. Now let's get that tap fuse. There are 2 fuse slots on here. 5 amp is for the dash cam, and since we pulled out the 10 amp, we need to put that 10 amp fuse on the other slot. So there are different size fuses. The one I pulled out doesn't fit on the tap fuse, so I'm using a different size 10 amp to the tap fuse. Then we can connect it to the 10 amp slot that we pulled out earlier. Alright, so I took the tap fuse back out so I can connect the power cable to the cigarette outlet. So this came with a plug, which we don't need. So we're just going to cut that off. So you can just toss it away, we don't need that anymore. So now we're just going to have to strip it off on the one end of the power. Now what I like to do is I bunch these loose wires together. And then you connect it to the tap fuse. And then you just want to crimp it on together. Make sure it's really nice and tight. After that, I just like to tug on the cable to make sure it's not loose. Then I do the same on the negative wire. So the wire is a little bit too thin, so I strip off a longer length and folded them. And then I connect the negative wire to a terminal, then crimp it, and then make sure it's not loose. Here's the grounding which I would connect to. It already has a bolt, so just remove the nut, connect the ground, and tighten the nut back on. The positive fuse connect back to the ignition 10 amp slot. So before I start installing the dash cam, I want to connect to it first, make sure it powers on when I turn on the car. So let's get that power cable that came with the dash cam, connect it to the cigarette outlet, and plug it onto the dash cam. So I'm going to turn on the car's ignition, and the dash cam should automatically turn on. Perfect. Now when I turn off the car, the dash cam should automatically turn off. Now that everything works, we can go ahead and install it. Here is how I'm going to run the wire. I'm going to be going along the weather seal right here, up and into the A pillar. Then I'm going to tuck around it inside here, and then to the roof liner above it, and then to the center console. The wire should just dangle down the middle. So I'm going to start out here in the center so I don't have extra wires to hide up there. I'd rather hide the extra wires down by the fuses. I'm using the plastic pry tool to help me tuck the cable above the roof liner. So just pull out the weather seal and the cable should be tucked underneath it. This is why I started from the top, because there's just a lot of extra length cable. So I tie them all together and tuck them away on the bottom. Alright, here it is after, and you don't see any wires, which is the point. You want to make this a very clean install. And here is all the extra cable and the cigarette lighter that's all tucked away. I use a zip tie to make sure they're not going to fall out. Alright, now let's put on the new dash cam mirror. Now on the back, we're going to use the rubber that's included, attach it to the mounting bracket on the top side first, on both of them. And now we place it over your existing mirror, then we loop the rubber onto the bottom mount. So now it should be securely placed. Now you want to connect the power. Here it is all installed. You can stop right here if you don't have a backup camera. But if you have the backup camera like this one does, you can continue to watch the rest of the install. Now let's move on to wiring the connection for the backup camera. This is the cable included that connects to the mirror dash cam. The yellow plug goes to the backup camera, and the red wire is tapped into the reverse light. That way, whenever you put the car into reverse, the dash cam will switch to the backup camera. Now I have to remove all these plastic trims, and I'm going to route the wire into this rubber grommet and going to pass the wire all the way to the front along the driver's side roof liner. Removing the plastic trims are fairly simple. They're all held on by clips. I use the plastic trim removal tool to help me with that. This part is the tricky part because it's hard to pass the cable through the grommet. Here's a tip. Using a zip tie or a long metal stick, tape the end of the cable to it. Then slowly pull the zip tie out, which will help fish through the end of the grommet. Now I will start feeding the cable through the headliner. It's a similar process when we were doing the front cables. Just pull out the weather seals and fish it through. On the other end of the cable, I started tucking the wire behind the plastic trim, and this is where we're going to tap the red wire onto the reverse light. Now let's unplug the reverse light. There is two wires, a red and white. I know the red is the power and the white is the ground. So I'm going to use a wire tap and connect the red wire to the reverse red wire. And then plug the reverse light back in. Here is where I installed the backup camera. I drilled a small hole on the plastic trim to pass the wire through. So here's a recap of what I did. I tapped the red wire to the reverse light. The yellow plugs into the backup camera right here. And then the cable is fished through this rubber grommet. And then it's passed through the driver's side roof liner all the way to the front. And then I connected it to the mirror dash cam right here. Here's a view from the outside of where the backup camera is. It's very small and it's hardly visible at all. Now that it's all installed, let's go ahead and test it out. Let's also put in the micro SD card. The dash cam turns on when the car starts and it automatically starts recording front and back at the same time. I love how this is a touchscreen and it's easy to navigate through the settings. You can tilt up and down to get the best angle. Let's test out the reverse camera. Put the car into reverse and the camera will display the rear and have parking guidelines too. You can do a split screen front and rear at the same time. You can also access the media and play it directly from there. Here I'm going to select the front. And these are all saved in 4-minute intervals. And then you can also check the rear. You can put the screen to sleep by pressing the button on the bottom. Alright, now let's shut off the car and the dash cam will automatically shut off and stop recording. Once again, let's do a full test. Here we have the front facing camera as you can see with my fingers. Now let's put the car into reverse and it'll display the rear camera with parking guidelines. Put the car back out of reverse and it will put the camera back to the front. Now here is some footage of the dash cam unit. The quality is pretty good. It has a nice wide angle lens so you can see more of the view. Now that I have it recording front and back at the same time, I can have proof of anything that happens. So if you ever get into an accident and the other party lies about it, you actually have the footage to prove your innocence. You know, there's a lot of scams out there, so it's better to have yourself protected with the dash cam. That's it for the complete install of the dash cam along with the hard wiring. If you want to get the Tapa fuse and the cigarette outlet, the links will be in the description below. Other items you may need to get on your own since every car is different, such as the fuses. Alright, thanks for watching. Please give us a like, comment, and subscribe for more future videos.